Are you using an Agile approach to analytics? If not, here are 3 reasons to practice Agile analytics. Hi, I'm Jen. I'm an analyst with 15 years of experience who now runs a consulting company. I use Agile analytics for most of the work that I do. Agile is a development framework focused on flexibility and adapting to changes constantly. From a development standpoint, it sets an end goal and a loose structure, but doesn't try to plan everything before starting the work. When you think of the traditional development process, let's say developing and producing a new car model, you're probably most familiar with the waterfall method. What is the waterfall method? With the waterfall method, you define your goal and timeline and then spend time, a significant amount of time up front, planning everything thoroughly before you ever start the actual work of the project. You identify milestones, who's going to be involved, what work will take place, when it needs to be delivered, when you're going to go into production, all from the start. Waterfall focuses specifically on thorough planning to avoid changes being made along the way. This work happens sequentially. You do one phase, then you move to the next, and so on, usually saving all testing and verification till the very end of the project or close to the end of the project, and then launching into production with whatever you've developed. When executed well, the waterfall method is an excellent approach where the cost of production is extremely high and the cost of late changes is extremely high. Let's say the manufacturing of vehicles that we just talked about, where if you get to the end of the process and you need to make a change and you need to adapt, you could have long timelines or high costs to resource parts from a different supplier, to change the design of a part a supplier might be supplying or that you're manufacturing in-house, to adapt assembly lines to properly fit, to adjust your entire sourcing pipeline. All of these changes become very costly for something like producing a new car if you make changes late. So preparing early and sticking to a very thorough plan makes a lot of sense in these scenarios. That's waterfall. So what's Agile? Agile is an alternative method to use for development, and it's become increasingly popular thanks to software development. Now it's almost exclusively used when we talk about software development projects or anything that's IT related in terms of development typically is going to follow a more agile approach. In some ways, Agile starts out the same way as the waterfall method. You have your delivery time frame, you have your budget for the project, you have some goals. But where Agile differs is instead of spending a lot of time and money and effort in the upfront planning, Agile says we know we're going to want to make changes along the way, so let's just get started. It focuses on an MVP, a minimum viable product, getting done as soon as possible. A lot of times Agile is bundled with Scrum and you have sprints where you're looking at typically a 2-week time frame. You identify what can get done in 2 weeks and then you deliver that to the business or to the testers so they can start work giving you feedback. Then you move on to the next phase while they're giving feedback and that feedback gets incorporated as it's given. What this allows for is constant change from the very beginning. So if something is a little bit off or it's not ideal for how the business needs to work, the desired function is not happening like you expect, you get that feedback from the users right away. When it comes to analytics work, both waterfall and agile approaches show up, and they each have their place. Sometimes you are doing a project that needs a lot of scoping up front, that has a very specific end goal where there's not really time for feedback along the way. However, I think where possible, you should use an agile approach to analytics. Now that we've outlined what agile and waterfall are in terms of development methods, let's talk about 3 reasons to use agile for analytics. Number 1, Agile focuses on value. Agile focuses more on what can the data tell us rather than focusing on proving a hypothesis. There's a significant amount of data analysis and data science work that is focused on proving hypotheses. However, if you think about the buzzwords and the really more forward-looking aspects of data analytics, data science today, they're all things that focus more on that agile process. When we talk about AI, when we talk about machine learning, we're talking about knowing that there's going to be constant change along the way and building models that can take in these changing factors, changing criteria, and adapt to them. We're talking about models that constantly take in new information and adapt to it to always give the most relevant result back. The second reason to practice Agile. Agile assumes that the future is going to be different. Agile is all about learning and adapting quickly. It assumes that just because you did something one way in the past, that you always wanted a specific piece of data in a specific context, doesn't mean that's how you're going to want to use it going forward. This doesn't mean that you're constantly throwing out the work you did and starting over. Rather, it means that you're constantly looking for ways to iterate, to improve what you've done, and provide something that's giving more value, that's more relevant, that contains whatever the current needs are and delivers on them. An agile approach is especially helpful when things that we've always taken for granted as stable and models that we've always taken as stable and predictable no longer meet that criteria. When there's once in a lifetime, or unfortunately sometimes multiple times in a lifetime, disruptive events that change things. This could be everything from the advent of software, AI technology, to things like a global pandemic that mean the models that have always worked suddenly are no longer quite as accurate as they used to be. Agile says we know that something's going to change. Maybe it's not going to usually be on that scale, but we're going to go ahead and prepare now, and we're going to build ourselves up in a way that focuses on being ready for that change, being ready to implement changes. The third reason to practice Agile analytics is Agile works with users. Think of your users not just as the users of a software, like if you were developing a software or an app, but your users as anyone that's using that data that you're providing, the analytics work that you're doing. For analytics, your users could be everything from someone using an interactive report you've done to do their day-to-day work, up to C-suite executives that are making business decisions and directional decisions based on the analysis that you've done. Agile focuses on user satisfaction throughout the process by involving them throughout the process. If you're developing a report that's going to be used by somebody doing their day-to-day job, it's much easier to make sure that it meets their needs when you're building that report by working with them to understand how do they use it, what are their end goals out of it, how can you develop something that really truly meets those needs, and having them test, having them interact and provide feedback along the way rather than performing an analysis and handing them the result, or building them a dashboard and saying here's what you need, but not taking time to get feedback to confirm yes it is what they need, yes it's providing what they expect, the results they're getting align with something else that they've been using in the past to get that work. A simple way to do that, if we're talking about a dashboard for instance, would be to sketch out a basic framework and then go to someone that's going to be using it and ask, does this contain everything you need? Are there other pieces of data that'd be helpful? Is that interactive dashboard you created easy to use correctly? Sometimes we build things that make a lot of sense to us, but aren't as intuitive for others. And with analytics, we need to be careful that we're making sure to frame things in a way that is easy for users to understand and get things correct, so they're not making bad decisions from a misunderstanding of the data. Also look for ways to give users a controlled environment where they can access their own data. I don't think it's ideal for everyone to have complete open access to the data, and I know that's not an opinion everyone shares, but I've seen it go wrong too many times to think that the best case scenario is for everyone to have all the access. Rather, I think that it's better to have things structured in a way in a more controlled environment that still lets people explore data on their own, that lets them do their work on their own, but it minimizes the chance of someone who thinks that they know what they're doing from creating analysis that is at best flawed and sometimes downright wrong, because they're trying to add in skills that they think they have. They're blending data in ways that it shouldn't be blended. There's just a lot of room for error if it's completely open access for everyone. If you want to implement Agile analytics in your work, in your company, and you're not sure how, book a coaching call with me and we can talk specifically about how to take a more Agile approach to your analytics activities. I'll put a link down in the description. Thanks so much for watching.